Hello, assalamu alaikum, sasriyakal, namaste. Hello, my name is Farheen Khan and you're watching the AZEEZA show. Today, we're going to be talking about body shaming. What does that mean? What does it look like? What is the impact? And how do we start to change the conversation when we talk about people's bodies? So with me are our guests, Sarah Khan and Shah Ahmed. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having us here.
Yeah, no, of course. This is actually a really, pretty heavy topic. I mean, not that, AZEEZA hasn't talked about some heavy topics, we always do, but this one in particular, I think, is a really difficult one to speak about. So maybe let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the definition. Like, what do you think, is actually body shaming? What does that mean to you?
Okay, I guess I can get started. So driving here, I did say the word body shaming out loud and my Google didn't understand because there's no definition in the Oxford Dictionary, but in the Urban Dictionary, the way it describes body shaming is predominantly an action that is deliberately made to humiliate someone through comments or mocking of their body shape.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think, similarly, I think that it is the action or the act of making fun of somebody based on their physical attributes or characteristics. But I would also add that it is the intention to hurt or humiliate somebody purposely.
Right. But I wonder if sometimes it's not as, overt, right? Sometimes it's quite subtle, or it could be something that, perhaps somebody doesn't think is intentionally hurtful, but can be. I know, Sarah, you've experienced it before. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your experience.
So when just a few days ago, I was rummaging through some of my old yearbooks, stuff that I gathered when I was in grade school. And as I was turning around pages, every other page I found had a cow on it, or a bulldozer, or the word fatso plastered on it. And that's what made me realize that where does that body image or that body shaming start? Right. And it was from a very early age, grad school, we were still talking about rainbows and ponies. But looking at that yearbook, it made me realize that it starts at a very young age, and that stays with you psychologically if you're that kind of person throughout your adulthood or childhood. Yeah.
Right. And what's been like, I mean, we'll get into it more. What do you think as a fitness coach, Shah? What do you think?
I hear this quite a bit from my clients.
Right.
So as a nutrition and weight loss coach, a lot of my clients, or majority of my clients, come and talk to me, and their first concern is, I'm not happy with my body composition, and I'm not happy because it's impacting my professional life. It is impacting my level of confidence, my relationships with my significant others, or my professional relationships with my colleagues. I sometimes also hear that individuals mock themselves because they compare themselves with other, and unknowingly, maybe, or knowingly, they are putting themselves down. So yeah, I hear all kinds of reasons as to why they want to make a change, or why they feel lack of confidence. But one positive thing of the conversation that I have with my client is that they all want to change themselves, but in a positive way.
Right.
Not resort to any sort of a quick fix, drastic action, but they all want to take a reasonable solution or a reasonable action to change themselves, and that's where our journey begins, actually.
Right. Can you give us an example? That's perfect. Thank you. Can you give us an example, Sarah, of the kinds of things that, outside of just grade school, but even now, right, as an adult?
I sure can. So my image of my body is something that I still struggle with, and it's like I said, it stemmed from somewhere, but as I entered into teen and adulthood, I just saw that it was very prevalent in our society to be a certain image or a certain body image that you had to fit. So, you know, in my young adulthood, I would often be told, hey, you know, if you do want a perfect partner, you know, you need to have a certain body type. So if only you lose a little bit of weight, you know, you might just score the right guy. Or, you know, as you know, I just did Kilimanjaro recently, and as I went through that journey, I was telling a lot of my acquaintances and family and friends. I was out with a friend of mine for dinner, and we were just celebrating that, you know, a couple of days later, I'm going to be going on this journey. As I'm conversing with my friend, a waitress came, grabbed the plate away, and she asked, she's like, which one of you is going to Kilimanjaro? So my friend, you know, visibly very fit and skinny, she said, oh, you know, this girl is. She's like, well, you can't be going to Kilimanjaro. You're too fat for that.
What?
So she looked at me and she said, you're not ready because you have extra pounds on your body, which makes you a less of a candidate to go on something like this. So that, I think, information like that or comments like that that's out in our society, I don't know, unknowingly or knowingly, do affect a person, and it has affected me. And I'm, like I said earlier, I'm going through, it's a work in progress to make sure I love my body and I am not ashamed for whatever size it is. You know, it's functional, and that's what I should be grateful for.
For sure. Wow. So what do you think, Sean? Like, what kind of, can you give some examples of some of the clients that you've seen or some of the stories that you've heard perhaps?
Yeah, I can give you two specific examples. I remember talking with the client, she a couple of years ago. When she became my client, she recently broke up from a relationship and was very, very down. And she would often, to feel good, she would often resort to food. So when we talked and through a coaching session, we actually figured out what the real issue is that she's very down. She was lacking confidence because of what has happened.
Right.
And she was taking that on to make herself feel better, she was eating any food that made her feel good. So she was resorting to various foods.
Right.
So the solution to that is that she, over 12 weeks, she lost close to 32 pounds.
Wonderful.
And so instead of resorting to food, she went to the gym after working with me, ate right, had lots of energy. While she was working, she had a promotion at work. So which all those
See, isn't that
combined
interesting?
together
Right.
gave her made her really confident, and then she continued to do well.
Yeah, but I mean that's actually really interesting, right? It's just like, you know, there's this particular image of people have in their minds of what, quote, the ideal person should look like, and the fact that, you know, this woman's getting a promotion after she looks, quote, more like, you know, the part, it is concerning, right?
It certainly is. So the way I looked at it is that she had the ability to do the job. She was lacking the confidence, but where I came into play is to help her go make the change in a positive way. She clearly wanted to make the change.
Right.
There was absolutely nothing wrong with her, but she
Right.
wanted to make the change because to come away from eating to going to the gym.
Yeah, but it makes me, like, listening to that story, it just makes me also think that how do we get to a stage where we put so much emphasis on the shape that we are, that yes, I will be confident if, you know, I reach a certain image or I reach a certain body type. I've done that, and I, you know, still struggle with that, but it just makes you wonder how does the gears churn in your brain to equate that I will be more confident if I look a certain way. I have all the skills, I have the communication, the soft skills, everything under the sun, but I will be more appealing or more, I guess, respected or more looked at if I have a certain body type, right? It's just very fascinating where it stems from, and I still am not able to figure that out.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And you had another example as well,
Yeah,
right?
the other example, I worked with a client recently where she told me before we started is that it's her parents who were making comments that are body shaming or borderline body shaming. Now, I don't know if the comments were intentional or they were trying to, I guess, quote unquote, trying to help her.
Encourage her.
But
So the wrong way
clearly,
to do it.
exactly. So clearly,
Right.
that's not the right mechanism to
Right.
help, because in a way they were body shaming her. So I'm still working with that client. We're in the process of working, but there's of course a lot of work that needs to be done.
Right.
But so those are the two stories that I can think of.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, you know, part of my journey as well, right? Like I was going back, you know, 5 or 6 years now. I was like almost 500 pounds, and you know, it took me a long time to. Actually, took me going through like, you know, and I talk about this very publicly. Actually, I actually ended up getting an arranged marriage. I had a nikah, and so. You know, got married to somebody, totally compromised on being with that person because of, you know, knowingly that they didn't have immigration and stuff like that. But I compromised because I didn't believe in myself, right? And so part of it was that when it actually came down to it, you know, 8 months later when we found out he was married, back home with kids and all this stuff, you know, it was such a shock to me. And that moment, it was like, there was so much anger. And I was like, no, you know what? I will never let anybody else come into my life when I have to compromise because I don't love myself, right? And that anger was kind of what really like drove me to go to the gym. And I remember going to the gym at that weight and walking in and just like changing my clothes, and I made it a routine. So I'd have to drive past the gym every time to go home from work. And if I didn't go, I'd feel bad, right? But at that, but like I used to just have a hard time like walking from here to there. I'd be breathing really heavily and stuff. So I'm like, how do I get to the gym now, right? So I get to the gym, I go change my clothes, I actually stand on the treadmill. I'm there for 5 minutes and I'm like huffing and puffing. People around me are looking at me like, why did you bother coming? But I did, right? I made it a thing about like, okay, I'm gonna do this every day, even if it's 5 minutes. I don't care what other people think, I'm gonna build up to it, right? And the thing is that, you know, over time, like right now I'm dealing, you know, I've been dealing with a bit of a health issue, so my weight's, you know, fluctuated a bit. But when I got to like, I lost 250 pounds. I was like half my body weight, right? And it felt so good. But even still, I feel like when I looked in the mirror, I just couldn't believe that it was me. And I had such a hard time. I remember the first time going back into like a plus size store after I lost a bunch of weight. And the lady looked at me, she's like, can I help you? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I'm looking for your clothes. She's like, we don't have clothes your size. I was like, oh, really? So, but you know, my biggest critic, I think at that point was still myself. You know, I still looked in the mirror and I'm like, no, this is not right. This doesn't feel right. I don't look, I still didn't. And when I hit the number that I wanted to hit from, you know, 28 to 12, I was like, oh my God, I'm here. But I still didn't feel like I was enough, right? Like, and that's the thing that I think a lot of us, you know, I mean, I don't want to just say women. I mean, I know women do, but I mean, everybody does, right? The question is, going back to what you said, Sarah, like, how do you start to shift the way people see themselves, right? And that sort of societal norm, if you will, of like what it means to be, quote, you know, a good looking person. How do we help people realize that being healthy is important, but at the same time that, you know, your confidence, you know, how does you, sorry, does that make sense? It's difficult to explain, right? It's just like, how do you help people find that balance to be like, you can still be healthy and happy with yourself and still be confident?
I think so the question then is, how do we look at being healthy, you know, being, you know, or exercising or working out be about health rather than a certain number or a certain body type that we need to fit into? And how do we change our own mindset to say, you know what, I'm doing this because I want to be healthy, but not because I want to look like XYZ.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that I think is something, like I said earlier, I struggle day to day with, but I also feel blessed that I do have the companionship. I have the right friends and family around me to constantly, anytime, you know, I'll say, you know what, I'm not wearing this because I look fat. No, you're wonderful the way you are.
Yeah,
and that is what I think is important.
For sure. We're going to take a quick break and then we'll be back. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everyone. We're just talking about body shaming with our two guests here, Sarah and Shah. So we were just talking about how is it that we, support people and encourage them to love themselves and to still live a healthy lifestyle, but not really focus so much on, the end goal of, quote, I need to be like so-and-so, right? What do you guys think?
I think that looking for the perfection is not the ideal method.
Right.
And there are a lot of dangers associated with looking perfect because it is very subjective.
Right.
However, I do want to say that that eating right, eating healthy, eating clean, depending on who you are, it can be a very lonely journey.
Right.
So for that, at least for me, it was. So what I did to mitigate the situation is...
And you were quite obese.
Right, and
now you're a fitness coach.
That's right. So
Pretty cool.
that's the other side, that
is.
change is possible.
Yeah.
Right.
For a majority of my adult life, until I was 30, I was obese, and I had complete strangers tell me that I'm fat. Like point blank, tell me that I'm fat.
I'm sorry.
And yes, it was hurtful.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It was hurtful, especially I know what their intentions are. They're not trying to help me, they're trying to put me down.
Right.
So for your audience who are out there listening today, I want to say that yes, change is possible. But back to what I was saying in terms of eating clean and following a routine can be lonely, can be at time lonely, because not everybody in your social circle is following the routine.
Right, for sure.
But that's where friends who are doing it, that's where having a coach or friends who are doing it is very helpful, because you need to be able to share your thoughts, day-to-day thoughts and changes, because your body goes through rapid changes when you're doing something like that. To be able to share and to get feedback as to this is what you did and that's why it's happening, so it's okay, continue on. You need that motivation no matter how strong you are. You need that motivation. Even I need motivation right now, even though I understand what's happening, but I need to hear it from somebody else. So that's what I would say.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's just, what do you think, Sarah? Do you think there's a difference in the way that men and women are treated differently when it comes to body image?
From my personal experiences, I think I have seen that. I'm not saying that men aren't subject to the same scrutiny that women are when it comes to, body shaming, but I find society just tends to be a little bit more aggressive when it comes to commenting on how women are, and if they're a little fat or they're a little this or a little that, and I've personally seen that a lot. We often hear this term that if a guy is a little on the plus side or a little bit healthier, it's like it's a sign of him belonging to a good healthy family. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's just, again, that's my own personal experience that I've seen, and doesn't indicate that that's the general society, but that's what I've seen. And women are just subjected to this constant barrage of messages that you gotta lose weight, you gotta lose weight for this purpose or that purpose from a very young age, unfortunately. Yeah.
And I mean, even if you look at the retail shops and stuff like that, right? A lot of the clothes are not, like these days you'll see that there's some places where they've got a little bit larger sizes, but generally speaking, a lot of the, trendy clothing is not made for, the average person, right? Whatever that may be.
Yeah, it's definitely not, yeah.
Yeah. This is like, so what do you, I guess the big question now is that, how do we start to shift that mindset? I think, because I mean, look, Shah, you talked about earlier how somebody would get a promotion because they, quote, look the part, right? I mean, we Sarah, you said we hear it all the time, right? If you lose, I remember this matchmaker auntie saying to me, right? Like, oh, lose 50 pounds and you'll find the great husband, right? I'm like, okay, sure.
Tagline.
Yeah. And just come back when you're ready, But I mean, that's a whole different conversation of should you wear, a dupatta, should you not wear, a shalwar kameez, like all this stuff, right?
Should you not be coy?
That's a whole other conversation for another day. But you know, that's basically what it is. So you know, there's a question of individuals we've talked about, right? How do we start to shift our own personal mindsets? You know, it's about trying to start to look at being healthy and being confident in ourselves, and what does that mean for people, right? But then there's the sort of societal sort of perspective on that. Have you guys seen anything, or have you like, you know, or is there something that you found of interest that you think could be a good sort of way to start to shift that conversation?
I recently was just, you know, surfing the net or surfing Facebook and came across this video that someone had sent me. So it was a Bollywood actress who was talking about body shaming within the industry. So it's not just, you know, the average Joe who goes through it, but it's also celebrities, and how people were talking about celebrities looking a certain way, why they put on weight after their pregnancies and whatnot. And she commented, her name is Sushmita Sen, and she made a very powerful comment that I think stuck with me, about people body shaming or people saying stuff like this. And her quote was, you know, I will lose the weight, I will achieve what I need to, or I will gain the weight, but what will happen to your character that you lost on the way when you decided to body shame me?
Right.
So it just sunk in, saying to me, at least, or resonated with me, that yes, you know, people are there. People will find flaws in anything and everything you do. You will have people who are praising you and cheering you on, but there will always be that proportion of people who will find flaw. You're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not, you know, you're too skinny or you're too big or whatever it is. So it's a reflection of their character. It's a reflection of who they are. Let them say that. You shouldn't, or you should try your level best not to internalize it.
It's really difficult though.
And it's extremely difficult, but I think it needs to be not something that goes from 0 to 100, but it needs to be taken baby steps at a time. That yes, someone said this to me today, it's their view, not a reflection of who I am.
I mean, I was thinking about this when I was experiencing this, and I have seen that when I didn't say anything, had a awkward smile and walked away because somebody who said that to me is probably a lot older than me, or the fact that I don't know them very well, I cannot engage in a conversation that in a sensitive, because it's a sensitive matter to me. And the more I would have an awkward smile and walk away, the more I would get these sort of messages, because then as I got older, I realized that I was, by having an awkward smile and walking away, I was giving them the green light that it is okay
to say
that you can make comments about my body, put me down in a public situation, and that is okay, and I will accept it, and I will walk away and not do anything about it. So for your viewers, what I would say, and I say this to my clients all the time during our consultation, that you have to say, I'm not saying that make a scene out of it, but you have to say to that person how you feel. And it could be as simple as, your comments today really hurt me. I did not like the comment that you made. It really hurt me. And just leave it at that and see what they say, or see how they react to it. So that would be my mechanism, that when I started doing that, to tell them nicely how I actually felt about that comment, they either apologized, or they then had a very awkward smile on their face and walked away. Right? Those are the two mechanisms I have used, and I have seen drastic results.
Interesting. See, that's great. I remember always hearing, like, as soon as I would sit down to eat, even though I was losing the weight, and I mean, generally speaking, people couldn't tell if I had lost 70 pounds or 100 pounds, because I mean, in the beginning, I just couldn't see the difference. I just knew that if I kept investing, eventually it would show. And I remember sitting, and the moment I'd like have a plate of food in front of me, people would be like, oh, you're always eating, right? Like, okay, great, you know, like, or, you know, like, oh, why are you having that or this, you know? And I remember doing like some of the programs like Weight Watchers and stuff, where it was like, it's okay to eat the ice cream, but just, you know, watch your portion size, right? But it's like, oh, well, this is what you're doing and you're supposed to be on a diet, like this type of thing, right? And so it was always like, okay, well, you know, and I don't think I ever actually questioned that. Like, I don't think I actually, you know, quote, stood up for myself. I just kind of left it. But it was almost like, I remember when I was really young, I was like teenage age. I remember when somebody used to say that, I would purposefully eat in front of them just to annoy them, and then that was not good for me, right? Because that's actually hurting myself. It's a way of self-harm. So,
exactly.
you know, I think there's a balance in terms of how do you still, you know, to some extent, especially if they're elders who are just trying to, quote, encourage you, right? How do you find that balance, right? To be able to sort of call them out, but in a way that actually gives them that sense of like, okay, well, this is actually not appropriate. It's not helpful, right?
I'm going to tack on to something that you mentioned. I had a friend whose sister recently was called fat by, you know, publicly, and the way by an elder, her initial reaction in the past was just internalize it and move away.
Right.
But this time she decided to do something new, and that's back to what you said. She called it out, but in a very polite manner, and she said, you know, thank you, but, you know, I would have appreciated more if you had called out something good about me, that I look nice, or this outfit looks good on me, so maybe let's try that next time instead of calling out what you find something that's not good about me.
Right.
So that's a different technique to try as well, I guess.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, we've basically run out of time. I just want to say thank you so much to both of you for coming on the show. Like I said, it wasn't an easy topic to talk about, but I really hope that this will help the viewers, you know, and thanks so much for doing all that you do. Looking forward to keeping in touch with both of you as well.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, that's it for this week. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. Take care.